One of the cool things that you can add to your microcontroller project is the use of an infrared receiver, like those found in many TVs and other media appliances. So I'm going to show you how to wire that device and how to program it using the Picaxe. Alright, the IR receiver is in a package, and that package will have three leads. One side of that package will have some type of lens, and that lens will usually either be a round protrusion or an oblong shaped protrusion. So with that protrusion facing us and we having these three leads, we need to make a number of connections. On this one here on the extreme left, we would need to connect a 4.7 k ohm resistor, and the other end of that resistor would need to get connected to plus 5 volts. That pin will also be connected to our microcontroller. So we're going to have an input pin. Let's say it's B.7, and that's getting connected to that first pin. The middle lead or connection is going to get connected to ground. Then the third one to the furthest to the right, that is going to get connected to our 5 volts as well. The other end, a capacitor. The other end of the capacitor connected to ground. This is an electrolytic capacitor in the neighborhood of 4.7 microfarads. I've used a 10 microfarad with no difficulty. So you can see the connections are relatively straightforward and basic. So we've got the 4.7K to 5 volts, same pin going to the port, a ground connection, the other one going to 5 volts, and then a capacitor going to ground. All right, so how do we program this? What we need to do, we're going to create a simple loop here. So I'm going to use my do. We're going to use the IR in command, so infrared in. We need to specify the port that this infrared receiver is connected to, and in our example, that is our B.7. So I'd follow that with B.7. Remember, as always, whenever we can, we want to be using symbols for keeping this short because of the limited space. I'm not using symbols. So you would want to replace B.7 with a symbol definition. Now the data that's coming in from this infrared receiver into our pin, our infrared in port, is going to need to be stored into some symbol or location. That's going to be B.0. I'm using a direct reference here. You would again want to be using a symbol. So we're going to be pulling in a byte size value. The value will range from 0 to 127, corresponding to whatever key was pressed and then received with this infrared receiver. Once again being stored in B0. This is all that you need to do. They've made it very, very simple. There's a lot that goes on, but they've made it very, very simple to be able to retrieve the number corresponding to the key that has been pressed. Now, if you want to know which key is generating what number, we could add in here a serial TXD statement and simply have it display the B0, that byte 0, and put in here a carriage return and a line feed so that every key press ends up on its own separate line. So if we put this inside of our loop, this will run loop, 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 and anytime you press a key, you'll be able to see the number that corresponds with that key press. So if it's the number 1 that you're pressing on the infrared remote, you can figure out what number is going to be generated so that you can work that into your program. Maybe you're going to have some key press of numbers that'll give you access or run a particular part of your program. You'll be able to figure out what those numbers on the remote correspond to in terms of a number or a value. Maybe you're going to use the volume up, volume down to change the speed or brightness of something. To figure out what those numbers are so that you can incorporate those into your program, you could simply use this program, press that volume up, volume down, see what numbers are being generated, and then work those into your program. So you can see it's fairly straightforward then in wiring up the infrared receiver, fairly straightforward in retrieving the data that would be coming in from that IR receiver.